So a little while back, I spent a couple of weeks cycle touring in Italy, going from one side of the mainland over to the other before taking a ferry over to the island of Sardinia to explore the amazing northwest corner. A little before that trip, I also spent about a week cycle touring in Sicily, going from the island's capital of Palermo over to the other side of the island to see Italy's largest active volcano, Mount Etna. So in this video, I just wanted to share 5 of the things that I've learned while cycle touring in Italy. My most recent ride through Italy reminded me of one of the reasons that I love travelling by bike, which is that you get to explore all of those little places that most other tourists usually miss. By getting off of the beaten track, I found myself in fields filled with wildflowers, in abandoned train stations with grass growing through the tracks, in the gardens of long-forgotten houses, and in ancient villages with little more than the songs of birds breaking the silence. Sure, these places might not be as impressive as the Colosseum or the Sistine Chapel, but you do get them all to yourself. And rather than having a tour guide read you all of the facts, you're left wondering how these places got to be the way they are. Who used to live here? What happened to them? And will anyone ever return? Many of the places that I just stumbled upon while riding through Italy also made for great wild camping spots. For example, while crossing the mainland, I spent my first night on a remote Roman aqueduct, looking up at the stars while gently swaying in my hammock. A few days later, I came across a castle on top of a hill. Since I arrived in the evening and there was nobody there, I decided to spend the night. There were loads of rooms inside the castle, but these were all damp and full of insects. As I didn't fancy staying in any of these, and as an experiment I hadn't brought a tent with me, I ended up hanging my hammock between 2 external walls and fell asleep to the sound of cowbells chiming on the surrounding hills. In Sardinia, I either just found a flat spot for my mattress on top of a cliff and spent the evening watching the seagulls, or I climbed down to an isolated beach and strung my hammock between a couple of boulders. One night, when there weren't any suitable boulders or trees, I built a structure for my hammock out of washed up logs supported by big piles of rocks. When it started to rain, I stuck some sticks through the strings and used those to prop up my tarp. Although this was loads of fun, it was also hard, sweaty work, so I bathed in the sea while I waited for my pasta to cook and before climbing into bed. So as great as the riding itself was in Italy, some of my best memories from the trip are of all of these amazing places that I found to spend the night. So one of the cool things about cycle touring in Italy is that it's relatively easy to take ferries between the mainland and the islands, and even to other countries on the Mediterranean. Before my most recent cycle tour in Italy, I spent a few weeks riding and island hopping through Greece, and to get to Italy, I paid about €75 to take an overnight ferry from the Greek port of Patra to the Italian city of Bari. Next, after a week riding across the mainland, I paid about €40 to take another overnight ferry, this time from Naples to Sardinia. At the end of my trip, I paid about €50 for a ferry that left Sardinia early in the morning and got into Barcelona in the evening. With all of these ferries, unlike with flights, it was completely free to take my bike, which didn't need to be dismantled in any way, as it could just be left with all of the cars. I also never paid extra for a cabin, since if I needed to sleep, I could usually find an empty sofa or could just set up my camping mattress on the floor. So if you're thinking about a trip in which you combine the Italian islands with the mainland or that involves other countries, using the ferries could be a great option. This probably won't come as much of a surprise, but riding through the larger Italian cities, such as Naples, can be quite an intense experience because of all of the traffic and because of, well, the way people drive. Unlike in many other European countries where the flow of traffic seems to be more dictated by rules about who has the right of way, in big cities in Italy, the traffic feels more free-flowing, as the way the locals drive seems to be underpinned more by a philosophy that you should just do what you want and let others adjust accordingly. Also, when I was in Naples, despite there being bike lanes, These were often filled with obstacles such as bins, parked scooters and cars, and trucks making deliveries. I didn't mind occasionally embracing the challenge of flowing with the traffic when in built-up areas like these. However, while the countryside also presented some challenges, it was always a relief when I found myself back in the quiet of the rolling hills or in the shade of a forest. And luckily, when cycle touring in Italy, it's very easy to plan a route that mostly involves landscapes just like these. On my most recent bike trip in Italy, I arrived at the start of June, and the weather was just about perfect, with the days not too hot and the nights not too cold. As an example, in Naples in June, the average highs are 28 degrees, the average lows are 18 degrees, and the average sea temperature is 23 degrees. You also get about 9 hours of sunshine each day, and on average, typically only 3 rainy days each month. Although we don't all have the same preferences, I think a lot of people would find riding in July and August too hot, with average highs of over 31 degrees in many parts of the country. On the other hand, I think many people would struggle with the cold if riding in the winter. Even in Palermo, one of the country's warmest cities, temperatures in January typically only get up to 15 degrees during the day and drop down to 9 degrees at night. For me, the best time to go would be late May / early June, or any time in September, when the temperatures are warm but not scorching, and you could still comfortably take a dip in the sea or in a river if you needed to cool off. So those are some of the things that I learned while cycle touring in Italy. If you've also ridden there, I'd love to hear about your experiences. If you're thinking about riding there and you have some questions, feel free to leave them in a comment and I'll try to get back to you. If you do go, I hope you have an amazing time. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.